Please work quietly and follow along. At any point, click the pause button to catch up or take a break. Hello, today we're going to be creating these awesome miniature dinosaur sculptures using plaster. Plaster is a very porous material and it gets hard like concrete, but it works great for casting. Casting is when we create a mold or an impression of an object or something. Similar to like a fossil. So for this, I have a small, like a bowl, just a regular exterior bowl. I put saran wrap or plastic wrap in it so that way it's easy to lift out my project. And then I'm using clay. This is like about a small apple size worth of clay. And what I'm gonna do first is press my clay after rolling it into a ball. I'm going to press it so it's relatively flat so it can fit inside the bottom of my bowl. I'm gonna use my fingers and I'm gonna merge it. Now it's okay if the clay has your finger marks in it. That's how I got the fossil looking like it has ground. And I'm going to press it in. I'm going to move my fingers and push the clay around to the outside edge of the mold, which is our bowl and our saran wrap. Okay. I just want to kind of seal this edge, making sure that the clay is, up tight against the plastic wrap. That when we pour our plaster over it, there won't be a chance that the plaster can get underneath the clay. Okay. Now, I can just take my fingers and you can kind of smooth out this surface, or you can leave it rather bumpy. I kind of do a little bit of both. I have some areas smooth and some flat, so that way my skeletal structure of my dinosaur will really stand out. Okay. Now one last thing is as well, you want to kind of keep your clay as flat as you can. You don't want it raised up against the side of the bowl. That will create kind of an interesting cast shape where it might create fragile edges as well. Okay. Good. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick from an array of these sand toys. These are miniature dinosaurs. And there's a lot of cool shapes. I'm going to do this one. And what you're going to do is in your clay, you're going to press the dinosaur into it. And I kind of start at one end and work my way around. You're going to press it so it's a little bit like about a 1/4 inch into the clay. You do not want the dinosaur pressed in so far it goes to the bottom of the bowl when through the clay. I just kind of tap in the legs to get that, because when the dinosaur is compressed in the earth, it is completely flat. We'll zoom it in so you can see a little bit more of the action here. There we go. And I'm just gonna, I like to go over it just a few times. The tail, mainly around the rib cage, that's where we're gonna get a lot of detail. The neck and the head. Okay. Now even though the dinosaur doesn't lay perfectly flat, I wanna make sure I'm getting it an impression all the way across. You can remove the dinosaur really nice and slowly. And there's our impression. You'll notice that some areas, like in his leg, are more deeper. When we are doing casting, we're kind of creating the opposite. So when we pour our plaster, that is actually what's going to be standing more out towards us. Okay. Then other things you can do with the dinosaur is you can take more bones and create, different footprints and things. So what I like to do is I like to run the tail of a different one, make it look like a bone, maybe a leg. I can do footprints, different like claw marks into the earth, push down. I can even add another dinosaur head. I'll do this triceratops. This always looks really cool. And I'm going to just press it, getting as close as I can, making sure I have all the areas kind of around the edge in there. Okay. I'm going to pull it out. So that will create some of the triceratops that way. Tails, anything, maybe ribs, whatever you can kind of get into the clay. Next, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be mixing our plaster. So I'm going to put this kind of off to the side a little bit. And for our plaster, we are going to use a cup to stir it in. Here's my cup. It's just a little plastic cup. It's for 7 ounces. And then I use a popsicle stick to mix the plaster together. Okay. Now, plaster is usually a 2-to-1 ratio. So that means I will need 2 scoops of plaster and 1 scoop of water. For this project in particular, we're going to be using 4 scoops. And I have these little coffee measure scoopers. They are equivalent to 2 tablespoons, okay? But I found these work a little bit easier because we can scoop more for less scooping. So here's my cup. When you scoop your plaster, I shake it over the bag a little bit, and then I just run my finger over the top. So that way any excess plaster goes into the bag, and I'm getting a nice flat scoop, nice even and consistent. Then what I'm gonna do is I pour it over the bag and into the cup, really putting my scooper in the cup. Okay, and we need 4 scoops, so we're gonna repeat that for 3 more times. Flattening my finger, I'm gonna pour it over the bag. That helps create less chance of messes. So now we need 1 more scoop. Good, that is the plaster. Now plaster is like very much a concrete kind of feeling like I mentioned earlier. You do not want to put this down the drain. So if you use a container that you're going to mix in, that's going to be thrown out because it will clog the sink. And I need 2 scoops of water because I did 4 scoops of the plaster. So half of 4 is 2. I pre-scoop some water. Okay. Also too, I keep my water scoopers separate because they are wet, and if I would have put it in the plaster, it's going to start to use that plaster in the bag and damage it. You will notice it's kind of bubbling and popping. That is the water seeping into the plaster, any air pockets. I'm going to start to stir it. It's kind of like a milkshake. And plaster will kind of chunk, so you're going to want to break up those chunks. And it's going to be kind of like a runny, very watery milkshake, but the water will get absorbed in your mold and the plaster will dry extremely hard. Make sure you're scraping your popsicle stick around the bottom so that way you can get any chunks separated. This will take a few minutes to do that. So I'm gonna mix and then I'll see you back here in a few. Okay, I just took a few minutes to mix up my plaster. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just gently pour it into my mold over my clay. I like to start in the center and then work my way out. I start with my deepest areas first. Your deepest areas are where you really pressed your dinosaur in. Okay. And then I just run my popsicle stick to make sure I get as much out of the cup as I can. Okay. Next, what I do is I make sure my plastic wrap is hugging the edge as best as it can, so I kind of just pull it towards the outside. Okay. The cool thing about the plastic wrap edges, it gives this impression like the earth is cracking, like it's split or it's rock-like. Also makes it easier for it to pop out, which you'll see later on. Okay, next what I'm doing is I take my bowl and we want to start to help the air from the plaster and the water and the bubbles race to the top and out of our casting. So I'm just taking it, I'm tapping on the table for a few minutes. Is our mold. It's been exactly 1 hour, so I'm going to now remove it using the saran wrap. My plaster is still very wet, but it should maintain its form and it can finish drying once it's not surrounded by saran wrap and clay. So I'm going to lift my saran wrap up and out of my bowl, flip it over, and now we're going to begin excavating. So here's my clay, and I'm just going to start peeling it away. And my clay comes off all in one chunk for the most part. And there is our amazing dinosaur fossil. This one looks a little bit more rocky. You can see like up in here where my fingerprints and the cracks in the clay. But still my fossil is very noticeable, and the amount of detail the plaster picked up is incredible.